I said,
How are you, Sue?
Doing good. Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't have
Mhm. So how was your trip to Belize?
on this
Oh, it
Android.
was good. Yeah, it was great. We just, so much to do there. So much to learn. And how's neighbor Bob?
I haven't heard from him in a few days, but at least I see him getting out in the car and everything. So that's good. I always keep track of him.
Yeah, that's good.
Make sure that he's still up and around.
Good.
Morning, Dan.
Morning, Dave.
You look caught up on your sleep.
I don't take as much sleep as some people in this house.
Whoa,
that was cold.
That's true. That's very true.
That's true at our house too, but it's the reverse. Nancy doesn't need much sleep.
Hmm.
Gets up at 4 every morning and thinks it's time to make coffee. Sounds good to me.
Well, somebody has to do it.
Whoops, yeah.
I wore purple today in honor of Ben Davis.
They went.
Apparently they won their game last night and they ended their season totally undefeated.
Oh, wow, amazing. Great.
Good.
Good for them.
I know they're our rivals, but
Ben Davis.
I started saying, don't you live in Decatur Township?
I do, but I'm in Swan and we meet
Okay.
Davis.
Donna Betty, how much rain did Mooresville get?
I have no idea.
A
A
lot.
lot.
I heard we had like an inch and a half, mostly I think early in the morning. The bigger rains were west of us around Terre Haute and south, I think.
Yeah, we had 2 inches.
Okay.
We
It rained
measured at the airport.
It rained hard enough, Sylvia, that I was in the basement of the early meeting building trying to sleep, had my hearing aids not in, and the storm was so loud I could still hear it. It absolutely poured and crashed and banged and yeah, it was pretty wild Thursday night.
I slept through the whole thing.
Well,
Interesting.
I have a lake in my backyard, and let's see, this is Sunday, Saturday, Friday. I had mallard ducks swimming in my lake.
Well, we trimmed all the shrubs at the parsonage, and I mean, really trimmed the shrubs in the rain yesterday morning.
Ooh.
But it was that drizzly junk. Of course, it cleared up in the afternoon, you know.
Huh.
Or Steve.
Where is he? How is he? He's at home and he's fine.
Okay.
He's just not here today. Last week was chemo week and he sometimes has some symptoms over the weekend, so he just feels okay, but
Okay.
It's like he's doing pretty good.
but he's doing fine. I mean, he's over at the
Good.
farm every day and, you know, getting ready to be out in the field and that kind of stuff, so doing well.
Be a little damp now, won't it?
Yeah, it'll be a while.
Saturated as it
Yeah,
is.
it'll be a while. And unfortunately, it's still cold enough, he doesn't have his rain gauge out, you know, because he didn't want it to freeze, and so we don't know exactly how much rain we got, but there was plenty.
2 times.
Yeah, the USFW group was in Plainfield, but we decided to go to Grace for dinner on Friday night. And so driving down Old 267 right by White Lick Creek, it was way up.
Yes.
Somewhere had gotten a lot
Yeah, well, we got
Covering.
a lot, I mean,
Yeah, it
the
was way up.
little creek behind us is as wide as I've ever seen it.
So it'll be a
Trina
while.
sent me a message that they had 1.5 inches one day and they were supposed to get 2 inches the next day. So I don't know if that happened,
Ooh,
which means it was leaking around our basement windows.
Oh, okay.
We're thankful to be far away from there, so we don't know it.
But are you glad to be home?
Yes,
Mixed feelings.
Well, yeah, but
whole list to do when we got home.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday we had Rashidi's family here. The guys were helping Dan remove a fence. Took about 7 hours to do that, and I had to went and got the girls, and we all had lunch together here. That's a full day.
Yep.
Yes.
She is just more fun being with the girls.
Well, the guys came out to help me take out an old fence. And so it was a driving lesson time for them. Tractors and ATVs and pickups and they've had no experience with driving at all. And
The boys.
the boys, yeah. Rashidi had a license at one time, but they're just kind of, oversteering all the time and going
Yeah.
up the road, they're from one side to the other, and they have a lot to learn. But
Yeah.
it's a good place to learn out here.
Yeah.
Pulling fences, when I relearned how to drive a tractor, when we moved down to where we live now, I hadn't driven a tractor since I was a teenager. And we had the fence row that goes back to, or where our driveway is, that was overgrown with trees and barbed wire fence in it. And we used a lot of heavy chain, and I learned to drive the old Alice Chalmers, pulling that stuff out, wrapping chain and yanking and.
What happened?
Huh?
What happened
What happened when?
when you pulled the fence set and turned your tractor?
I didn't turn the tractor over pulling fence. I turned the tractor over mowing the side of the hill.
You rolled it.
I rolled the tractor. David J. saw me do it. He's coming across the bridge at White Lick Creek, and he pulls up. I'm still hanging there from the seatbelt. He goes, "Roll a tractor?" And I said, "No, thanks. Just rolled one." I was so scared.
Well, one of the things that I appreciate about my dad was the way that he taught me to do things. And I loved putting up hay with him. I spent so much time out in the field. And if I were driving a tractor with the wagon with hay, and then an old-fashioned hay loader, some of you know what that looked like. All of that attached, and we'd come back from the gate. He'd get off the wagon and go open the gate, and he'd turn around and say, "Now think about what you have following you." He wouldn't tell me how to get through. He'd say, "Think about what you have following you and what you need to do to get through the gate and then to go around the barn and park it in the right place." So he taught me critical thinking without saying, "This is critical thinking." And I appreciate that.
We remember Norma driving the tractor in the field on Ralston Road and hearing her sing clear across the field. You could hear her more than you could hear the tractor. Great.
I had to sing really loud to be above the sound of the tractor.
Tractor.
Do that too when I drove the tractor.
Yep. It's a good place to practice.
Need some
Good for
kind
the
of.
neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
I never sang driving the tractor.
I don't think I did either.
I did.
I wrote
did
a few
too, all
books
the time.
driving the tractor.
Really?
Yeah, it's a good place, you know, to sit and just think. I worked out a lot of book stuff when I was out driving.
I had to concentrate, or man, I was not where I was supposed to be.
When we did the PBS special with Carrie Newton, Bill, and Scott Russell Sanders, they came out to each of our homes, and they did film there. And there's a scene of me on the tractor, and I mentioned that I do a lot of thinking on the tractor, writing books. And about a month later, was downtown and just going to the local restaurant, one of the restaurants by the office. This woman walks up and she goes, "You're the guy who wrote the book on the tractor." Yeah, that's me. No idea my name. And the guy who was filming was standing in the front bucket.
Oh, wow.
With his big TV camera shooting over the hood into the. It's like, you're braver than I am.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you here last week, Dale.
It was good to be there. I was glad to have that opportunity.
Yeah. That was the most we'd had in person other than the Christmas musical. Or musicale, whichever it was.
We played music.
It was interesting to see the actual place and how different it is from the image I had just from watching you on Sunday mornings on Zoom.
Stolen food.
Well, today we're ready for the food pantry tomorrow, so it looks even more different today than it did when you were here last week.
Yeah. Here, we're surrounded with food. If we get hungry, we're in good shape. Pretzels are right next to Chip. Chips are just next to Chip too.
Dan and I plan to be there on the 16th.
Oh, great.
On our way back from North Carolina, where the cousins are getting together again.
Good.
Easter.
Somewhere between 25 and 30 people will be together in Black Mountain, North Carolina,
Nice.
for our first cousins get together.
How many kids do we have?
Well, Norma's headed over to the piano to do a prelude for us, so.
She's gonna play "This Is My Father's World."
Well, thanks, Norma. For announcements, the only one I'm aware of is we will have Sunday school following meeting for worship. Today's theme is Bible trivia. I did send out a Bible trivia test, but if anyone else wants to join, even if you haven't taken the test, you can sign up and test your knowledge of obscure things obscure and not obscure that are in the Bible. Are there joys or concerns to share?
I was over at my friend Pat's, the elderly lady that has cancer, and she got a good report. The thing in her throat has gone down, so they're not going to have to put a feeding tube in her, and she's eating. So she was in real good spirits when I was over there this week.
I think it'd be well to remember the tornado victims. That had to be one of the worst outbreaks in quite a while.
It just said nothing.
Well, Sylvia's the worship leader today, so let's send her into some silence, and Sylvia will lead as she feels led.
Last year at this very same Sunday, this very same almost date, I spoke about my experience living for 4 weeks on the campus of the deaf school sponsored by the Mennonite colony of Spanish Lookout in Belize. This week, we just returned from there again. I read through that message, and thinking you probably remember every word of it, I will try not to repeat much of it. I tried to encourage us all to enlarge our world and our hearts for learning about how others live and think, such as the German Mennonites who have cleared thousands of acres of land for farming in western Belize near the Guatemalan border. I also spoke about a deaf woman named Florence who had been hidden by her parents for decades because they didn't know what to do with her, and the Mennonite woman named Tina, who continues to help Florence learn to function in the outer world after the death of her parents. Last year, I shared with you that Florence had a very large abdominal tumor that caused much concern for Tina and others. She looked about 8 months pregnant when I saw her. Florence was terrified when taken to a doctor because she didn't understand anything about medical procedures. That was last year. Thanks to Tina's patience and gentle presence throughout this whole ordeal, this year I can report that Florence had surgery last summer to remove the tumor, and she's doing well. Today, I'd like to share some thoughts about some Mennonites separating themselves from the rest of the world as a means to live out their testimony on simplicity. The 2020 census counts about 2,500 Mennonites who are residents in the colony called Spanish Lookout. That includes those who have left the traditional Mennonite church to form a more evangelical churches. The land was purchased by the community as a whole, then the community sells it to the individual members. Last year, I said the Mennonites didn't pay any government taxes, only taxes to their community, but that was incorrect. They do pay their fair share of government taxes, and they pay taxes to their community for building and maintaining roads and other infrastructures in it. It's like a little democracy there. They send representatives to their council to make the decisions, except that they don't let the women vote on the representatives. The community representatives make rules such as if you're not a member of the community, You cannot buy land or own property in the community. You can shop for goods and services there, and you could work in the businesses. Well over 1,000 people who are not Mennonites come into Spanish Lookout daily to work and many to shop. There are 5 Mennonite churches in the community, and the other 5 or 6 churches have been established by people who used to belong to the Mennonite churches. But it's only those 5 churches who support and manage 4 mission schools, plus the deaf school where Dan's house is located. The mission schools serve the Hispanic people who live in the area around Spanish Lookout. Now, not all those 5 churches are exactly alike. Some are a little more liberal or conservative than the others, sort of like Quakers, right? But basically, they have similar worship services with men selected as ministers from their own congregations giving the messages. The messages are mostly in German, but interpreters are supplied for visitors who need them. The women and their daughters and the men with their sons sit on opposite sides of the meeting house. There's no instrumental music, but they sing hymns in both German and English. They are serious about teaching their members to sing without instruments and offer classes for training. So the congregational singing is lovely and is in 4-part harmony a cappella. The Mennonite men wear casual clothing, much like we would expect to see at West Newton. But the women all have long hair tied up in a bun and covered with a black veil pinned to the backs of their heads. The women's and girls' homemade dresses reach up to the neck, fit at the waist, have mid-calf length skirts, and sleeves at least halfway to the elbows. There are a few that are plain in color, but rather they have flowers or other printed designs. They're in durable fabrics. They wear dresses at every occasion all the time, and I witnessed a few of the deaf girls running very fast in them. In spite of the dresses, they were running very fast. The dresses are a statement about modesty and about identifying as people separate from worldly fashions. As long-term guests, Dan and I try to show respect to the Mennonite culture by dressing accordingly. I found or acquired a few long skirts and blouses that fit the expectations okay, but I can say that I didn't really feel comfortable in the Belize heat and humidity, nor safe when managing stairways. I even stumbled over a threshold in one of the shops we visited, and then tumbled down when I tried to catch my balance and step forward into my long skirt. I was glad I didn't have any injuries, and I was real glad to get home and put my jeans on. We visited in several Mennonite homes. Now, most of these Mennonites are not poor people, but they choose rather simple furnishings in their houses. Even though Mennonites make nice furniture, we saw just a few finely crafted wooden dining tables or chairs. Most of the time, we sat on plastic chairs similar to those we would use for outdoor picnics. And we sat at tables at times with worn Formica tops. We saw no dishwashers, though a few microwave ovens. Nice sofas and recliners were rare. Most homes had washing machines, but clothes are mostly dried on the line outside. I did not see any TVs in the homes. So from actually trying to live within the simple lifestyle of the Mennonites, I've come away taking a look at our own attempts to live simply. Now, I must tell you that some of my experience also comes from this 113-year-old house where we live in Iowa. Dan has not tried to keep up with trendy furniture or other decorative items in the house. Mostly I admire him for that, but he has had to repair these 100-year-old dining chairs we're sitting on several times over the years, and the 50-year-old kitchen chairs, and it doesn't matter to him that none of our furniture matches the style or color of anything else. After we were married, we did buy a new double recliner we sit in to watch public TV programs once a week or less. And we do have one nice chair in the living room. The first time Dan took a look inside the Salvation Army store for things we might need for our refugee family, he found a lovely and well cared for off-white upholstered chair priced at $12.50, which he bought with his own money. It had just been donated by a family of an elderly woman going to a nursing home. We were glad when there were so many donations of other furniture for Rashidi's family that we could keep this chair. It adds a little class to our living room. You've heard of some ways the Mennonites in Belize live simply. They also have rather uncomplicated lifestyle expectations, especially for women. The community, the families, and the girls themselves all seem to be satisfied with an 8th grade education, so few even complete high school. Girls are expected to be wives and mothers, and those who aren't become teachers or secretaries or sales clerks. Could it be that having such expectations simplifies life for those girls and women, and for the men too? Would the society we live in be better off with such limited expectations? Or do we need to figure out a way to live simply in this more complicated world? Rufus Jones, many of you have read books by Rufus Jones, and you know that they're not easy reading. He was a Quaker professor at Haverford and an author of several books. He was a contemporary of my grandfather Mills, who had most of Rufus Jones' books in his library, and now they're in mine. He has much to say about spiritual depth being the roots of simplicity. This is a quote. In all the best generations of Quakerism, the ideal aim and controlling expectations of the wiser members have been to live the simple life. The simple life does not begin with a house or fancy spoons. It begins inside the person with the quality of the soul. Emerson's famous line, "Your life talks so loud I cannot hear the words you are saying," makes the idea pretty clear. Unclouded honesty of the heart, and the center of a person is the true basis for simplicity. The tone of a bell is settled by the quality of the constituent metal, and if that is wrong in stuff and mixture, you will not get a good bell by putting on a fine coat of paint. Rufus Jones continues on with saying, this trait of simplicity has been very clearly in evidence in the Quaker aversion to creeds and formulations of doctrine. Unquote. I have tried to boil some of the rest of this down because he uses a lot of extra words that confuse my thinking, my simple thinking. But he did try to say that though Quakers have not been rebels against the central truths of Christendom, they did not want their lives or faith complicated by the adoption of words and phrases coined in other centuries, colored by battles of ancient issues and incapable today of the same meaning the writers intended. Such phrases do not truly interpret the deepest meaning, but rather stir up controversy and strife. Instead of unifying Christendom, those words divide it. Instead of forming one irresistible array of the spiritual forces of this world, they tend to form groups that oppose each other. Instead of coming together to conquer the evil and darkness of the world, they resist each other. The words by which we express our deepest faith must interpret for us the living present truth of our time. They must be consistent with our time and be consistent with all we have proved, verified, and tested by our own soul's experience. Quote, few things are needed more today than this plain, simple notion that religion at its best is just joyous companionship with God. I'm going to read that again. Few things are needed more today than this plain, simple notion that religion at its best is just joyous companionship with God. Then he writes, But I pass from simplicity in the inner life and in worship to the simple life in the narrower sense. We come to the problems of business, of dress, of recreation, of entertainment, of culture, of luxury, in short, to the age-old problem of living a Christian life, not in a cave, but in an eager, busy, complex world of more or less imperfect men and women. The only way to overcome the world is to carry the forces of the spiritual life into the veins of society until peace and love and righteousness prevail there. We can best discover the spiritual life by contrasting it with the spirit of commercialism. The commercial spirit is selfish. Its culture is selfish. In the interest of selfish pleasure, it would turn the automobile into a juggernaut and take little boys out of places of spiritual influence to make them caddies for Sunday golf. Unquote. Today, we might say that in the interest of pleasure, we take little boys out of places of spiritual influence to Sunday soccer tournaments or baseball games. Now, here is my current internal battle as a college board member who has been asked to serve on a task force to study a proposal from the Applied Technology Department to implement a program called eSports, or competitive gaming, at the college. Research reports that 85% of college-age youth are playing those games, some violent, but some are not. Esports would be added to the school extracurricular activities, and students who play computer games would compete with students on teams of other colleges. Actually, there are many other high schools and colleges already sponsoring teams. The job of our study force, our study group, is to look at the proposal, give our feedback, and adjust the proposal if needed, or disapprove of moving it to the board for approval. Perhaps a couple of you who have already faced this dilemma as members of the boards of Quaker colleges, maybe you have an answer to that. But I learned that Earlham and Guilford, in fact, do have esports. My first response was just like you'd expect from an old Quaker woman, but I've mellowed some depending on the criteria for selecting the games, and have another meeting with the study group tomorrow to decide on how to adjust the proposal if we decide to move it forward. If we look in our Western yearly meeting, Faith and Practice, we see a query on our choices of entertainment. It is our Quaker heritage to encourage wholesome entertainment and not waste our time and intellectual abilities on activities that pull us away from our relationship with God. Our great-grandparents probably had to deal with the decision whether to allow instruments of any kind or any music in Quaker worship. As an example of the struggle for friends in the mid-1800s is the movie Friendly Persuasion, when the husband of the Quaker minister purchased an organ for playing at home, and she told him he had to either get rid of the organ or she would sleep in the barn. He brought the organ in the house, and she headed for the barn. Most of the Quakers I know have moved on or away from the stringent rules against dancing and playing cards. Have we given up our belief that entertainment should be wholesome, as defined by the dictionary as conducive to or promoting moral well-being? Well, if I take seriously the view of Rufus Jones, I would have to ask our esports task force how these video games contribute to our students' joyous relationship with God. But then I might have to ask, how does football or wrestling or soccer contribute to their joyous relationship with God? And those have been around for a very long time. And even though I wish our society would seek more simplicity in lifestyles, it seems to be a very personal choice that cannot effectively be governed or even preached by others. Is simplicity an idea that Emerson would say, "Your life talks so loud, I cannot hear the words you are saying"? If we take seriously Rufus Jones' comments about creeds being words or phrases that were written in the prior century with different issues in mind, can we apply that thought to say the ways we choose to entertain ourselves must express the living present truth of our time? They must be consistent with the present and aligned with all we have proved, verified, and tested by our soul's experience. Well, in this message, I've not been definite about my advice on living simply, but hopefully I've raised some questions for you to answer for yourself. What query would you write for a new version of Faith and Practice about entertainment? What query would you write for a new version of the testimony on simplicity? I've asked Norma to play I Would Be True. It's on page 432 if you have your hymn books with you.
Thank you, Sylvia and Norma. We'll now continue with unprogrammed worship and bid farewell to those who need to leave for other engagements or whatever, and hope to see you at Sunday school or next week. I appreciate Sylvia's message on simplicity and sharing from Rufus Jones. I must admit, too, when our school, Wilmington, was the subject of esports, I was kind of Eliza Birdwell and judging simplicity and spiritual life based on restriction instead of being open to the time. I certainly grew up in a time where music was always a given and so forth, and yeah, we kind of had to sneak around to play sports on Sunday, even just informally. Our grandparents did not approve. I remember the first church I solo pastored, one of the questions they asked me in my pastoral interview, and it really stumped me because I didn't know what an answer they wanted, was, how did I feel about playing sports on Sunday? Well, they wanted me to say I was for it, because they all, after meeting, had lunch together and then went out and played volleyball or softball or tennis or anything together. And so I've never questioned that at the college or whatever, but when esports came up, and we did approve it, and we did, indeed, we're introducing a minor in esports management as part of our sports management curriculum, since we're involved in sports management for professional football teams and everything else. We did approve that, but I had to put some blinders aside that were in thinking about how do we, at one level as trustees of a college, how do we work to deepen students' spiritual life so they can make those decisions? But then how do I, in my own life, stop just focusing on external sorts of things of what makes for a simple life or not? When I worked at the Center for Congregations, which was, many of you have never been there, but it's a nice building, and it's well designed, and it's well furnished, and nice art and everything. I was hosting a Quaker group from Friends World Committee, the finance committee, when I was assistant treasurer. And a prominent friend from our own yearly meeting came in and kind of sniffed that, well, we certainly aren't living the Quaker lifestyle here, are you? Which I thought, well, that's sad. Instead of rejoicing in the beauty that surrounds us, to sneer at it. And it hurt my feelings a little bit too, I have to say. So how do we move beyond that, which I think is a good question that Sylvia is asking? How do I stop being judgmental, especially towards others and their life? And how do I continue to learn to live spiritually, simply at a spiritual level, including how I manage my time, my electronic devices, how much TV, all those things that I find that a fellow in Canadian yearly meeting, giving the Quaker lecture on simplicity a few years ago, asked the question, what cumbers us? What weighs us down? And those are the things that take us away from simplicity. And that thought stayed with me too. So thank you, Sylvia. Well, if all hearts are clear, we'll end meeting for worship.
Thank
My
you,
heart.
Sylvia.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. That was inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Good to see everyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I hope to see you at Sunday school in a few minutes. Test your Bible knowledge.
That'd be awesome.
All right.
Your,
Worship with Marshalltown First Friends this morning. So
okay, well,
Okay.
your salvation is not determined by correct answers to this, and your name will not be erased from the book of life because you got one wrong.
Good, then I can join.
Yes, this is non-legalistic Bible trivia.
some of those are kind of, I would have had to look up most of them.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. All right. Bye.